Containerized weapon systems are far more terrifying than you probably realize. We aren't just discussing gadgets. We are talking about cruise missiles, drone swarms, anti-air systems, and even massive defense barriers, all deployed right out of a simple shipping container. The sheer scale of the problem is what makes it a true nightmare. Over 20 million shipping containers are moving globally at any given time on cargo ships, train cars, or even freight trucks. If you can't tell what is inside that giant steel box, any container effectively becomes a deadly surprise package capable of triggering the next Pearl Harbor event. There is a reason why all the usual suspects, the United States, Russia, China, Iran, and Israel, already have missile launchers hidden inside these innocuous-looking boxes. But the terrifying reality is that you don't actually need to sink ships to cause the next global catastrophe. Hiding missiles in containers isn't a new idea. The US Navy was already exploring this way back in the 1980s with the Air-Pale program. But the concept of masking weapons goes back even further. During World War II, we saw the rise of Q-ships, heavily armed merchant vessels disguised as ordinary transport ships to lure German submarines into surface attacks so they could be destroyed. Today, that deception has been perfected. The US Army uses the Typhoon missile system, which fits 4 vertical launch cells inside a 40-foot shipping container transported by truck. Typhoon can launch both Tomahawk cruise missiles and SM-6 anti-air missiles. The Navy has a similar system, the Mk-70 payload delivery system, which is also a 4-cell launcher designed to be dropped onto flight decks or moved by trucks on land. But the real turning point occurred over a decade ago when Russia managed to fit 4-caliber cruise missiles into a shipping container. This became known as the infamous Club K system, which first became public in 2010. And where Russia goes, China often follows. The Chinese developed their own version of the Club K, showing it off at the 2022 Zhuhai Air Show. This move was deeply tied to China's long-term plan to militarize its vast commercial shipping sector. In fact, since 2017, China has enforced a law requiring its transport companies, even those overseas, to support the military whenever they are asked. To understand the true threat, we must analyze the why. What are the tactical advantages of weaponizing containers? The primary benefit is stealth. These systems utilize existing civilian infrastructure, trucks, rail, and cargo ships, allowing weapons to be positioned near critical targets without the adversary having the slightest clue. This substantially increases the possibility of a preemptive strike. We saw this in June 2025 when Israel used assets, including shipping containers, to launch a drone attack that destroyed Iranian air defenses. The element of surprise is a decisive factor in modern conflict. Now, multiply that by hundreds on a commercial vessel, and you have the potential for an entire floating arsenal hidden in plain sight. Another advantage is deployment flexibility. It's not just missiles. You can pack drone swarms and electromagnetic jamming equipment into these boxes. For example, Rheinmetall's Hero 126 loitering munitions can be launched from within a standard shipping container. Even a small 10-foot unit can pack enough of a punch, carrying different weapon components ranging from miniguns to automatic grenade launchers. Finally, containers are the ultimate decoys. Because any steel box could be a weapon, scattering a massive number of them across a battlefield creates utter chaos for the enemy. It becomes simply too expensive and time-consuming for them to find and destroy every single possible target. The future is going completely all-in-one, with systems expected to run themselves using AI, making decisions and operating with almost zero human input once deployed. To see this doctrine in action, look at June 2025, when Ukrainians pulled off Operation Spiderweb. They smuggled 117 drones into Russia, hiding them right inside the double roofs of modular homes carried on 5 freight trucks. While these wooden sheds were not shipping containers, the concept was identical: perfect concealment. These 5 innocent-looking trucks were actually heading to 5 different air bases, the homes of Russia's strategic bombers. On the operation day, as the drivers pulled up next to the installations, those roofs remotely popped open, and drones started taking off one by one. Because of the long distances, the drones relied on artificial intelligence to guide themselves toward the Russian aircraft. According to reports, they successfully hit 41 military aircraft, including nearly a dozen Tu-95 strategic bombers. Military analysts quickly labeled this Russia's Pearl Harbor. But the real question keeping analysts awake at night is, could an attack like this happen in the United States? Since the Al-Qaeda suicide bombing attack on the USS Cole in 2000, US naval security has focused on surface attacks. Bases have patrol boats and barriers to protect against boats and naval drones. However, these measures are useless against attacks from aerial drones. To see how vulnerable American naval installations truly are, look no further than the January 2025 incident when the FBI arrested Chinese national Feng Jianxi. He flew a drone right over the Newport News shipyard and other classified installations, snapping pictures of nuclear submarines. You might think, great job, FBI. You caught a spy. But the only reason he was arrested was because he flew his drone directly into a tree near the facility. It was only after authorities retrieved the damaged drone that they realized the breach. This highlights a critical vulnerability. While a US Navy destroyer is combat-ready at sea, when it is docked, all those combat systems are basically inactive. The fleet is exposed. So, how hard would it be to completely disable the US Navy's Atlantic Fleet? Picture this nightmare scenario. A commercial container ship heads to Norfolk International Terminal, located just south of the Norfolk Naval Base where the Atlantic Fleet is stationed. Suddenly, a few hundred drones launch from those deckside containers from less than a mile away and swarm the moored warships. These drones do not need to sink the warships. They just have to hit the 4 Spy 1 radars on those Arleigh Burke destroyers and Ticonderoga cruisers. By knocking out the radars, the ship's anti-air capabilities are instantly disabled, meaning they can no longer launch their interceptors. The result is that the entire US battle group is crippled. The current production rate for new SPY-6 radars is only 8 to 10 units per year, and each destroyer needs 4 to regain defense coverage. We are talking years to fix that fleet. This is not a fantasy. Navy personnel have published articles warning about these exact vulnerabilities. Just like the Ukrainians targeted multiple bases simultaneously, imagine an adversary targeting Naval Station, Mayport, Norfolk, and San Diego all at once. It would be a second, third, and fourth Pearl Harbor. An actual swarm of drones launched from containers would have catastrophic strategic consequences. First, it would instantly slash the US Navy's deployable fighting force. Second, American naval bases would no longer be secure, forcing the remaining fleet to stay constantly on the move. But here is the massive turning point. Once an attack like this happens, it gives the United States the authority to immediately target any civilian cargo ship that looks suspicious without worrying about international pushback. Every single cargo ship would become a valid military target, drastically increasing the chances of hitting innocent civilian vessels by accident. This would cause a global security overdrive and intense paranoia for governments and shipping companies worldwide. One thing is certain, this is the new age of asymmetric warfare. Containerized weapon systems effectively level the playing field, making it possible for smaller nations and even non-state actors to suddenly challenge the most technologically advanced militaries in the world. Thankfully, launching weapons from a container ship is more complicated than you think. It's estimated that 25 million cargo containers enter the United States annually, but only 3% of them arriving by ship are physically inspected. Inspecting every single container would not only paralyze trade but also undermine global confidence in the shipping system that underpins 90% of the world's commerce. This is exactly what happened in the aftermath of Operation Spiderweb, with Russia beefing up truck inspections. Since scanning every container is unrealistic, the only real option is developing next-level drone swarm counter-defenses. Since modern drones rely on sophisticated AI algorithms to guide themselves to targets, simply spoofing GPS may no longer be sufficient. So what do? Enter the Marine Air Defense Integrated System, or MADIS. MADIS is deployed across 2 tactical vehicles. One handles a radar and command systems, while the other is pure firepower. It is loaded with a 30mm cannon, Stinger missiles, and electromagnetic countermeasures. Deploying these MADIS-equipped vehicles in sufficient numbers across military installations might be the best defense there is right now. But what about the missiles? Sneaking a missile launcher into a container is orders of magnitude harder than smuggling drones. That is simply because a missile launcher would be much heavier than almost any commercial cargo. And remember, heavy containers typically go at the bottom of the stack to keep the ship's center of gravity low. But to fire a missile, the container has to be stacked on the very top so that the roof can pop open to launch it. Putting missile containers on top of the stack would require months of planning and the collaboration of the ship's crew and the crane operators. This means such an operation would only be possible by a powerful state actor, not just a few people with bad intentions. The threat is complex, the stakes are existential, and the containers sitting in the port right now might just be the most dangerous weapon on Earth.